Today, we're diving deep into a rising storm in Northern Europe that's grabbing the world's attention, the situation in the Baltic Sea, where tensions between Denmark and Russia have reached a dangerous new level. What started as political posturing has now turned into an alarming confrontation that some analysts are calling a potential prelude to open conflict. The Baltic Sea, once considered a stable zone under NATO watch, has suddenly become a flashpoint that could pull the entire region into a military standoff. In recent months, the friction between Denmark and Russia has intensified beyond mere rhetoric. The Danish government has taken a firm stance on protecting its maritime boundaries and NATO's strategic interests in the region, especially after repeated reports of Russian vessels entering restricted zones and conducting suspicious military activities. This comes amid broader European fears that Russia, following its aggressive policies elsewhere, is testing the limits of Western tolerance in the Baltic Sea. Denmark, known for its traditionally measured diplomacy, is no longer holding back. The Danish Defense Ministry has released multiple statements highlighting increased Russian naval activity near the Danish Straits, particularly around the Øresund and the Great Belt, both crucial for maritime traffic between the North Sea and the Baltic. These waters are not just trade routes, they're strategic choke points. Whoever controls them holds a vital lever over naval movement and energy supplies across Northern Europe. For Russia, maintaining access to the Baltic Sea through these passages is essential. For Denmark, allowing unchecked Russian presence there poses a direct threat to national and NATO security. The tension grew after a series of alarming events involving Russian reconnaissance planes and warships. Danish authorities recently confirmed that Russian military aircraft violated Danish airspace, prompting immediate NATO coordination and scrambled fighter responses. While Moscow dismissed these incidents as navigational errors, Danish and Western intelligence suggest otherwise. These intrusions are part of deliberate pressure tactics aimed at testing NATO's readiness. This isn't the first time Russia has used this kind of intimidation strategy, but the frequency and boldness of these recent actions are new and worrying. Adding to the anxiety, several unexplained underwater disturbances have been detected near critical gas pipelines and communication cables under the Baltic Sea. Ever since the Nord Stream explosions, European countries have been on high alert for potential sabotage. Denmark, together with Sweden and Finland, has strengthened surveillance around these vital infrastructures. Satellite imagery and sonar our data revealed unidentified submersible activity close to Danish controlled waters, raising suspicions of covert Russian operations. While the Danish Navy has not confirmed direct Russian involvement, the pattern matches known Russian tactics of hybrid warfare, mixing cyber, economic, and maritime disruptions to destabilize opponents without declaring war outright. The stakes couldn't be higher. Denmark's geographical position makes it one of the most strategically valuable NATO members in the region. Its control over access routes to the Baltic Sea gives it a critical role in European defense. Russia knows this well. By pressuring Denmark, Moscow isn't just testing a small European state, it's challenging NATO itself. A confrontation here could force the alliance to respond militarily, leading to unpredictable consequences across Europe. The situation has also drawn in neighboring countries. Sweden and Finland, both now under the NATO umbrella, have joined Denmark in increasing their military readiness. Joint naval drills, air patrols, and intelligence sharing have all been ramped up. The message to Moscow is clear. Any aggression in the Baltic Sea will not go unanswered. However, Russia seems undeterred. Kremlin officials continue to accuse Denmark and other Nordic countries of provoking instability. By allowing NATO expansion and Western military exercises near Russian borders, behind the military maneuvers lies a deeper geopolitical struggle. The Baltic Sea region is not just about borders, it's about influence, resources, and security guarantees. Russia has long considered the Baltic its backyard, a gateway for its navy and energy exports. But with NATO's eastward expansion and Denmark's assertive defense posture, Moscow feels cornered. This sense of encirclement fuels its aggressive stance, as it tries to reclaim leverage in what it sees as a losing strategic game. Meanwhile, Denmark has emerged as one of the most vocal European defenders of Ukraine and a strong critic of Russian policy. Danish officials have consistently pushed for stricter sanctions against Moscow, even at economic cost to themselves. The recent defense budget increase and modernization of the Danish Navy signal a clear intention. Copenhagen is preparing for a long-term confrontation if necessary. In the past year, Denmark has also welcomed NATO's increased presence on its soil, including American and British troops, advanced radar systems, and surveillance aircraft. These deployments, though defensive in nature, have further irritated Russia. Public opinion in Denmark has shifted dramatically as well. What was once seen as distant geopolitical tension is now a domestic security concern. Danish citizens are increasingly aware of the vulnerability of their waters and infrastructure. Media coverage of Russian threats has led to growing support for stronger national defense and closer NATO integration. The Danish government's message to Moscow is straightforward. Denmark will not be intimidated, and any act of aggression will meet collective NATO response. Russia, on the other hand, is using its state media to portray Denmark as a Western pawn and accuse it of obstructing maritime freedom. Kremlin analysts claim that Denmark's actions could choke off Russian trade routes in the Baltic, effectively isolating Russia's Baltic fleet stationed in Kaliningrad. Kaliningrad, a heavily militarized Russian exclave between Poland and Lithuania, has become a focal point in this standoff. Russian missile systems, aircraft, and naval units based there are within striking distance of Danish and NATO installations. That proximity makes any misunderstanding potentially catastrophic. Military experts warn that the situation could easily spiral out of control. A single miscalculation, an intercepted aircraft, a mistaken radar reading, or a submerged submarine too close to Danish territory could trigger a dangerous escalation. NATO's rules of engagement require swift defensive responses, and Russia's pattern of testing boundaries leaves little room for error. Diplomatically, both sides are engaging in sharp rhetoric, but behind closed doors, back-channel communications between NATO and Moscow are reportedly ongoing to avoid accidental conflict. Still, the tension remains palpable. Energy politics also play a major role in this crisis. The Baltic Sea has become a battlefield for control over Europe's energy corridors. Denmark has been instrumental in halting Russian energy dominance, particularly after the suspension of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Moscow views these actions as economic warfare, while Denmark sees them as necessary for European independence. The recent discovery of new underwater cable sabotage attempts only heightens these fears. Danish intelligence believes these acts are designed to intimidate Europe into reducing support for Ukraine and to demonstrate Russia's reach. NATO's response so far has been cautious but firm. The alliance has increased surveillance flights and naval patrols across the Baltic region, while high-ranking officials have issued strong warnings to Moscow. Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg emphasized that NATO will defend every inch of its territory, and that includes Danish waters. The United States, Britain, and Germany have all pledged additional support to strengthen the Nordic region's defenses. The message is clear. Any attack or sabotage will be considered an attack on the entire alliance. However, the risk of hybrid warfare, cyber attacks, disinformation, and energy manipulation remains a major concern. Denmark's cybersecurity agencies have already reported multiple Russian-linked hacking attempts targeting military networks, energy grids, and communication infrastructure. The psychological aspect of this conflict is just as important as the physical one. By keeping Europe on edge, Russia aims to weaken unity and create divisions among NATO members. But so far, this has had the opposite effect. The Baltic countries, along with Denmark, Sweden, and Finland, are more united than ever before. At the diplomatic level, European leaders are calling for restraint, but preparing for the worst. Denmark has urged the European Union to develop a stronger collective maritime defense strategy, recognizing that the Baltic Sea is Europe's economic lifeline. Billions of dollars in trade pass through its waters every year, and any disruption could have devastating consequences for global markets. That's why this isn't just a regional issue, it's a global one. The world is watching closely, knowing that a spark here could ignite far-reaching consequences. Meanwhile, Russia continues to conduct military drills, showcasing its naval firepower and sending a message that it won't back down. These exercises, though framed as routine, involve simulated missile launches and anti-submarine warfare near international waters close to Denmark. Western analysts see these actions as deliberate intimidation, meant to remind Europe of Russia's capabilities. Yet the Danish Navy, despite being smaller, is technologically advanced and supported by NATO's powerful maritime forces. In a direct confrontation, Russia would face overwhelming opposition. Still, the fear of escalation persists. As winter approaches, European energy demands will rise, and Russia may use that leverage to increase pressure. The coming months could determine whether this confrontation stabilizes or spirals into something far worse. For Denmark, this is a defining moment, a test of its resilience and its commitment to defending not just its own sovereignty, but the principles of European security. The people of Denmark are watching events unfold with a mix of resolve and concern. The government's message remains firm: deterrence through strength. Military vessels patrol key waterways daily, and surveillance systems operate around the clock. Collaboration with NATO allies ensures that any move from Moscow will be met with a unified response. But everyone knows that the situation is volatile. The balance of peace in the Baltic now depends on discipline, diplomacy, and a bit of luck. Russia's long-term strategy appears to be keeping the Baltic region under constant tension, using uncertainty as a weapon. By doing so, it distracts NATO from other fronts, strains Western unity, and projects strength domestically. But Denmark's steadfastness and NATO's increasing coordination are making that harder for the Kremlin to achieve. Every provocation brings more NATO presence, more defense spending, and more regional solidarity. What Russia may see as intimidation could instead be forging a stronger and more united front against its ambitions. In the end, the Baltic Sea has become more than just a body of water dividing nations. It's now the front line in a new kind of Cold War. A struggle not fought with full-scale battles yet, but with surveillance, warnings, and power plays beneath the waves. Denmark's leadership and resolve are proving critical in defending Europe's northern flank, while Russia's actions remind the world that peace is fragile and must be constantly protected. As the world holds its breath, one thing is clear: the Baltic Sea is no longer calm. Denmark and Russia stand at opposite ends of a geopolitical storm that could reshape the security landscape of Europe for years to come. Whether diplomacy can defuse this war alert, or whether the situation escalates further, will depend on choices made in the coming weeks. For now, the world watches closely as the Baltic Sea becomes the latest arena in the ongoing clash between Russia and the West, a clash where even the smallest spark could have global consequences. And that's all for today's detailed breakdown. This Baltic Sea confrontation is one of the most serious challenges Europe has faced in recent years, and it's far from over. We'll keep following every development as Denmark stands firm against Russian pressure, and the world braces for what might come next. Thanks for watching, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next video.